Welcome to the Mind Health Coach program with Leah Marie here on the Dream Vision 7 radio network. You can learn more about Leah's coaching services at mindhealthcoach.com. Thank you for joining us today as we journey into the discovery of natural and healthy ways to achieve inner peace, happiness, and an ever-present state of well-being. You're already healed. You just haven't realized it yet. When you're ready, you can change your mind and change your life forever. The power of a beautiful life is within you today.
Welcome to the Mind Health Coach program. I'm Leah Marie, your host, and you're listening to a Dream Vision 7 radio network broadcast. And my show is heard on Dream Vision 7 radio network every Friday at 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. To learn more and for a full station broadcast schedule, go to dreamvision7radio.com. And you can learn more about my programs and the things that I offer at mindhealthcoach.com. And today I wanted to focus on meditation and weight loss. And so at the end of this show, the last segment, we'll be doing a guided meditation that will help us focus on creating a new you for 2019 and beyond. I think it's so important that we honor the physical being that we are in. It's important that we look at that and know that we are so blessed, especially here in America. A lot of us have so many resources to tap into, and the food is available. The quantity and quality of food that's available to our culture is vast, and it's up to us what we choose to blend into our being and put into our bodies to sustain us. Every human being on the planet needs sustenance, and that comes in the form of food source and water, and without it we can't live. I mean, I've seen, in my time in caring for the elderly population, folks that can no longer eat, and, their last 10 days or so is very painful. And, I also recognized a story that happened in the fall. November 1st, I think it was November 1st, an article was published in the New York Times about a young child that was in northern Yemen, and she was emanciated, and she's 7 years old, and there was a picture of her on the New York Times that showed her during the last week of her life, and it was really heartbreaking to me, and it made me realize how I was taking for granted my food source and all of the abilities that I've had to eat, and my children, how lucky I am and fortunate that I am that I've been able to sustain our family. And it made me think about every item of food that I have in my house and how I must honor it and also make wise choices for my physical being and, share that knowledge with my family. And, I can't imagine the mother of this child, Amal Hussein, that saw her child just, basically wasting away and in such pain. It's such a tragedy that I feel that all of humanity needs to kind of take a look at this and see how we are handling our own food source and clean water that's available to us, and what we can do to help those on the planet without boundaries, without countries and, different perspectives, how we can help those, especially children that are totally innocent in this whole process, help them to be able to get what every human being should be able to have, and that's clean water and, foods that are healthy to sustain their physical being. We're all brought to this earth. Our souls are delivered into this earth in a physical body that really represents, our physical imprint here on the planet. And, how we treat this body, it's really critical to our journey and our purpose. And, when we think about it from that perspective, the next time you're sitting in front of some food that really probably won't serve you, may be gratifying in the moment. And I don't say that we can, totally eliminate every aspect of that particular food that's available to us, because it is sometimes something that can bring us a very joyous moment and much gratitude. However, the long-term effects of eating poorly and making choices based on different feelings that we're having, like a lot of times when you look at when you've been eating poorly, there's been probably a lot of stress in your life, and that's substantial to recognize and know how, stress affects your perception. It can affect the way you are operating in many ways. It can make you, not sleep enough. It can make you make poor judgments, have irrational thoughts and behaviors that are not conducive to being the best you. And part of that is a lot of folks will turn to food for comfort. And, when we're turning to food for comfort, a lot of times those foods are not the ones that are going to serve you in the highest way. And when I see something like this little human being that was 7 years old and, passed in such a horrendous, painful way, it's just, it really affected me, in such a way, as I said, that it made me start thinking about the way I'm eating and my food and how I need to be very mindful in that aspect of my life. But, I just was so overwhelmed emotionally, as I think any of us should be when we look at that image of that starving child and how she was affected in her last days of life. And it helped me to look at the way I'm eating and the way I'm handling my food source, but it really devastated me, and it made me very emotional. I'm emotional now just thinking of her and the other children that are going through the pain and suffering of starvation. But at that time, back in November, I just felt so defeated and like, how can I help? How can I help? Because, that's me. I'm somebody who's always driven to see what I can do to help others. And, I've thought about it long and hard. I actually was, as I said, overcome with emotions. I went down to my favorite place to kind of resolve situations that are bothering me, and that's the beach. And that's near to my home. And I went to the ocean, and, it was dark out that night because I can remember clearly, like, I needed to go there. Even though it was dark and cold, I knew that was a small price to pay just to kind of meditate and be in a space where I could explore, how I was feeling these emotions of what happens in our world today, and, how I felt so powerless in trying to think of ways to help. And what I came to is, it's not probably going to make the biggest impact and change all of it, but I think that each of us focusing in on how we can help this issue. And, a lot of times world hunger is something that, it just sounds like a term that's so cliche. But when you see an image like that of a human being that's starving, it really brings it home. And it makes you really feel the emotions that, that as compassion and what can we do? And if each of us tries in our own way to affect things in a positive way to help this cause of world starvation and those affected by not having enough food or clean water, and appreciating all that we do have, then it can only bring the whole of humanity to another level. And hopefully someday all of us will be focused on helping one another. And, if all of us just focused on how can we help, one another and in ourselves, first ourselves and then one another, then, a lot of these problems that are in our world today wouldn't probably be here. If we weren't so obsessed with, the latest, greatest technology or ways to, outdo each other or, politics and different hot topics that are out there, but more so focused on the love of our own race and our own species, we probably would have such a higher effect in what we would do for these causes. And so, as I said, I came to the ocean that night in hopes that I would find answers. And I really didn't have answers for myself. All I knew is that in some way, shape, and form, I needed to do something in my own path to affect, this issue. And, one other aspect that I always think about is how can we preserve the planet, for all of living beings and creatures that are here on Earth and sustain life here on this planet. But, this particular issue is right here in front of us right now, and each of us has to take a look at how we're operating with our food sources and our water and how we can affect these other human beings that are not receiving the right to have that source available to them, which it is a human right. And, it's sad that it's controlled by money a lot of times. It's controlled by, political agendas. And it's very heartbreaking to me that children are this affected in this process. So I went to the beach and I stood in front of the waves. It was pitch black, and I said prayers, and I said a lot of prayers. And I stood there, and the emotions were just flowing, and they almost feel like they could right now. And I was deeply immersed in a moment of sadness. But in that moment of sadness, the seed was planted where I felt, very passionate that I had to do something, even if it was the smallest impact that I could make. I have to do something. So that's why I kind of blended this issue along with how we're looking at our own food source and how we are honoring our physical beings in that process. And, myself, I've actually experienced some the other end of the spectrum. In the last couple of years, I've gained some weight. I had a surgery in 2017, and that affected me, my energy level and all of that. And last year, I shared on this program that I had a very serious health issue in end of June, beginning of July, when you guys didn't hear me for a few months because I was recovering. And I had Lyme disease associated with meningitis, and also was lucky enough to have Bell's palsy and experience paralysis on the left side of my face, which has totally resolved itself, and I feel so fortunate. This was life-changing for me once again. I feel like this is life, and I didn't really go into why is this happening to me. I just thought, okay, this is life, and it's another opportunity for me to kind of take this moment of challenge and make sure that I'm honoring my physical being enough and being in a state of gratitude where I can actually shift and transform and bring myself into better health and also start, making better choices. So in my recovery time, I had a lot of time to think. I think I've shared with you guys, I actually had a PICC line for a month, which is no fun. I had to have daily antibiotics administered. My daughter, beautiful soul that she is, she enjoyed doing it because she's pre-med in college, and she really enjoyed helping me with, recovery and making sure that I had my medications administered, and it was a journey for me into wellness again. And I've really looked at everything I can do. It wasn't something I did anything wrong by having